Chapter 18, Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. Text 19. Jnanam karma chakarta cha tridhaiva guna bedataha prochite guna sankyani yathavat shrinutanyapi. In accordance with the three modes of material nature, there are three kinds of knowledge, action, and performers of action. Listen as I describe them. Text 20. Sarva bhuteshu yenaikam bhavam avyayam ikshate avivaktam vibhakteshu tasjnanam vidhi sattvikam. The knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all existences, undivided in the divided, is knowledge in the mode of goodness. Text 21. Prataktvena tuyas jnanam nana bhavan pratagvidhan veti sarveshu bhuteshu tasjnanam vidhi rajasam. That knowledge by which a different type of living entity is seen to be dwelling in different bodies is knowledge in the mode of passion. Text 22. Yatu kritsnavad ekasmin karye saktam ahaitukam atatvartavad alpam cha tatamasam udharitam. In that knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of work as the all-in-all, without knowledge of the truth, and which is very meager, is said to be in the mode of darkness. Text 23. Niyatam sangha rahitam araga dveshata kritam apala prepsuna karma yatad sat become uchite. As for actions, that action in accordance with duty, which is performed without attachment, without love or hate, by one who has renounced fruitive results, is called action in the mode of goodness. Text 24. Yattu kame psuna karma sahankarena vapunaha kriyate bahulayasam tadrajasam udharitam. But action performed with great effort by one seeking to gratify his desires, and which is enacted from a sense of false ego, is called action in the mode of passion. Next 25. Anubantam kshayam himsam anapekshya chapurisham mohararabhyate karma yatha tamasam uchite. And that action performed in ignorance and delusion, without consideration of future bondage or consequences, which inflicts injury and is impractical, is said to be action in the mode of ignorance. Text 26. Mukta sango naham bhari driti utsaha samanvitaha siddhya siddhyor nirvikara karta sattvika uchite. The worker who is free from all material attachments and false ego, who is enthusiastic and resolute, and who is indifferent to success or failure, is a worker in the mode of goodness. Oh, that is nice. Text 27. Ragi karma pala prepsur lubdho himsatmako shuchihi harsha shokanvita karta rajasa parikirtitaha. But that worker who is attached to the fruits of his labor and who passionately wants to enjoy them, who is greedy, envious, and impure, and moved by happiness and distress, is a worker in the mode of passion. Text 28. Ayukta prakrita stabda shato naishkirtiko lasaha vishari dirka sutricha kata tamasa uchite. And that worker who is always engaged in work against the injunctions of the scripture, who is materialistic, obstinate, cheating, and expert in insulting others, who is lazy, always morose, and procrastinating, is a worker in the mode of ignorance. Text 29. Budher bedam britesh chaiva gunatas chaividham shinu prochamana masheshena pritaktvena dhananjaya. Now, O winner of wealth, please listen as I tell you in detail of the three kinds of understanding and determination according to the three modes of nature. So back to text 19. We'll read read the translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In accordance with the three modes of material nature, there are three kinds of knowledge, action, and performers of action. Listen as I describe them. Purport. In the 14th chapter, the three divisions of the modes of material nature were elaborately described. In that chapter, it was said that the mode of goodness is illuminating, the mode of passion, materialistic, and the mode of ignorance, conducive to laziness and indolence. All the modes of material nature are binding. They are not sources of, even in the mode of goodness, one is, in the 17th chapter, the different types of worship by different types of men in different modes of material nature were described. In this verse, the Lord wishes to speak about the different types of knowledge, workers, and work itself according to the three material modes. So, if Maharaj is listening and would like to make any comments at any time, that's more than welcome. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Yes, Radha Damodar Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Hare Hare. I was wondering, Prabhu, because yesterday we were talking about prescribed duties. Now today we're hearing about action in the different modes of nature. So, I heard about. So, like, my question is. So, like, if somebody's following the prescribed duties, engaging in devotional service, but the result of their service is that is the action is like it seemingly in the mode of ignorance, so people do end up getting hurt, or there are some impractical consequences like that. I'm just trying to understand this. Because sometimes we see a devotee engaging in his service, his prescribed duties, and there are seeming consequences, like if he was engaging in actions in the mode of ignorance. So, I was wondering what's up with that.
Can you, refine this?
Yeah, so like, for instance, let's say in the society of devotees I have an important service to play in a particular department, and it's my I guess an easy one to hit at would be like New Vrindavan, like lots of devotees were following orders, but seemingly a lot of things were going wrong, but they were following the orders of their spiritual master. So, how do we have the intelligence to kind of navigate through that?
How can we have the intelligence to trust that our authorities are actually our authorities?
Yeah, and is it possible? I guess more. Is it possible for one for our duties, and for the results, for it to be transcendental, but the results still look like it was done in the mode of ignorance?
It's said that one can never understand the mind of a Vaishnava, of a pure devotee. We may see them acting in one way, but we try to use our calculation of what they may be thinking, or what their motive is, or what the end goal is. But the pure devotee is on a higher platform where seemingly they could do things that look like tamagun or mode of passion, but it's all for Krishna. So ultimately, it's transcendental. But how do we make a distinction, like, oh, this is a pure devotee, and this is somebody who's doing this activity? This is kind of the question, right? Because somebody's telling me to do an activity because that's my prescribed duty, but then they're not following properly, then things can get kind of weird. Yeah, we have to have knowledge. Point blank, period. We have to have knowledge. We have to hear from the scriptures. We have to hear from Guru, Sadhu. But how do we know the Sadhu, the Guru we're hearing from, is bona fide? The Shastra is the foundation of these pillars of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So we have to have knowledge of the Shastra, and the Guru and the Sadhu should be there helping to illuminate the Shastra so we can better understand what Krishna is actually saying. But the Bhagavad Gita, so simple but so complex. You know, if somebody's very simple, I mean, they can really get it, but the more complexities we have and doubts we have, then the Bhagavad Gita becomes this puzzle, you know, and we have to really dive in deep. And ultimately, all this knowledge, you know, it's revealed by Krishna within the heart. So, we need transcendental knowledge to see what we're doing and why we're doing it. And if our authority is doing something that we question, then we should question them. Or question, you know, if they're not open to being questioned and it's really sketchy, ask another senior Vaishnava. Or, you know, even within ISKCON, you know, a bigger thing would be ask the GBC. This is more like, you brought up Vrindavan. So, yeah, it's not that somebody starts implementing new ideas that are completely not what Srila Prabhupada introduced, and we just follow them, you know, willingly. We should use our discrimination. We have to surrender with intelligence. What is intelligence? Intelligence is ultimately coming from Shastra. But if we don't have knowledge of Shastra, then what to do? We can be like sitting ducks, you know. So, Prabhupada, I mean, he makes the point that the cheated will be cheated. But seemingly there's some sincere devotees and they also become cheated. So how to understand this? I mean, ultimately there's karma. We're all suffering the reactions of our past misdeeds, and we're put in certain situations that implements us in certain ways. But Bali Maharaj is the prime example of this. You know, he was put into a demonic family. He's the king of the demons. Albeit he had Prahlad in his family, but family of demons. But then he rejected his guru, his authority, because he was telling him one thing, but then he wanted to surrender to Vishnu. So we should also follow in his footsteps. He's one of the 12 Mahajans. Mahajans means, you know, showing the path of devotional service, 12 authorities on devotional service. So it's not that we're at his level where we should just outright reject our authorities or, you know, just point fingers left and right. But we can ask questions and understand. You know, Srila Prabhupada was transparent, completely transparent in all of his activities. And, you know, earlier on, when he didn't have this whole, like, international movement and trying to race to finish the Bhagavatam, he was so open to everybody. We heard, like, a week or two ago, some guy was talking to Prabhupada, and he was talking about what, something really weird. Well, he didn't want to get married because all the girls were unchaste, so he'd rather go deal with prostitutes. And Prabhupada was that open that he was talking to crazy, you know, hippie people on the streets. Rather, you know, point is, we should ask questions and understand. If our questions aren't answered to our full satisfaction, then that's an issue. That's a problem. We should always have our questions answered to full satisfaction. And sometimes we may not, and that may be a problem with our authority or our senior or our mentors, or it also may be a problem within our own self, something that we're afraid to look at, or pride is preventing us from actually seeing. You know, we can become checkmated with surrender if we want to. If we're really sincere to, okay, is this really it? Then we'll open up that field of questions, and you can become convinced, you know, have our false ego smashed, showing us that surrender is the only option, and it actually brings happiness where everything else brings misery. And, you know, this is the nature of a sadhu, to cut through the illusion. But if somebody's not really adhering to that, then yeah, naturally we should use our discrimination. So I don't know if that helps at all. I don't know if it's like a specific question. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought of a point which is more relevant to me, where I'm at, because that wasn't really relevant to where I'm at, but just something I was curious about. But what's more relevant to me is like I'm given a prescribed duty, and I don't actually do it properly, and therefore some ignorance is there in the result of that activity. So, like, you know, practically speaking, like if you're not,
If I'm given a duty and I don't like to do it, so I don't do it with enthusiasm, and then it's bringing me into tamagun.
And I'm liable to misguide people, especially if my service is like, you know, bhakti program, you know, or something like that. And there, that's also injury. Or on a more maybe like a high pressure level, if somebody has a position in the society which is like taking care of devotees on a large scale platform, and they don't do their service properly, then injury occurs, you know, something like that. I think that's maybe a little more relevant.
Yes, that's much more clear of the direction. Yeah, I mean, with how do you say, like, with the more service we're given, you know, there's responsibility. The more responsibility we take for Krishna, there's more room for more mercy. There's also more risk for offenses. So if I'm given a service and I'm being lethargic and kind of dragging my feet in doing that service, on a larger scale, that's just a testament to how we're going to do everything. Because our mind, we have to take with us everywhere. So I'm going to try to get specifically to your point, but I'm going to take more of a longer approach. But so, because Krishna is actually speaking about these things here in the Bhagavad Gita, he's talking about, you know, the factors of action in ignorance, in goodness. You know, the other night we were hearing about the 5 factors of action. So the whole point of this is Arjuna is questioning what's the difference between sannyas and tyag, which is the renounced order of life, and, you know, renunciation. So what's the distinction? And Krishna gives him like a few different examples of the sages say this and these people say this, which is alluding to like Sankhya philosophy and some other philosophy. But then Krishna gives his opinion. So what do we think of Krishna's opinion? Krishna's opinion is fact. It's not merely just opinion. He says opinion, but that's what it is. So he confirms it, and then he speaks on this, showing that because this 18th chapter is a review of all the previous chapters, and a lot of these points that we even just read, you can pinpoint them to certain shlokas where Krishna was speaking earlier, if you have knowledge of the certain Sanskrit words and the certain like points that he's making. So Krishna is speaking about this nature of action and goodness, ignorance, and all this. So we can try to connect that to this in a second, but my point is that, like doing traveling Sankirtan, I've met so many people, and I tell them I'm a traveling monk. They're like, oh, you know, I want to travel. They don't say, oh, I want to be a monk. They say, I want to travel. Because what does traveling mean? You get to leave your environment, and you go see this environment, you go see this environment. I could go, you know, to Canada, then India, and then Taiwan, and, you know, it's all exciting, it's all new. But sooner or later, once you get there, your mind catches up with you. All your problems catch up with you. So we may be given a new service and we take it on enthusiastically, but then sooner or later, our baggage catches up with us. And then we have the same mentality where we may think one service higher than another service, and we want to take up doing that service instead of this service, and I feel kind of let down that I'm given this prescribed service and it doesn't make sense for me. Okay, there's room for that. We all have different natures. You know, if somebody puts me on like the lead Harinam, you know, like on the Harinam ashram in New York, nobody's going to be happy. I have a lot of practice to do because that's not my like natural conditioned nature to just pick up instruments and figure it out real quick. So it takes a lot of work, which obviously I haven't had such the impetus to do so yet. So anyways, that's there for different things, different aspects of this. But menial service is the goal. This is what we're doing. We're chanting Hare Krishna, begging Krishna, please, Krishna, engage me in your service, engage me in your service. So we're given a particular service, and we shouldn't really discriminate between higher and lower service if it's not something that's like, specific for a certain individual. For instance, if I'm giving the task of washing the dishes, okay, this is my service, I'm going to wash the dishes, and I'm going to be enthusiastic. We are reading in the chapter 17 last week where Krishna is talking about austerities of the mind. And I was talking all about this point where it's like an austerity of the mind to be satisfied. So it's actually something we have to practice, being satisfied with our position that we're given. Otherwise, then, the same thing, the point that I just mentioned. We want to go here, we want to go there, we want to do that. Because I'm not satisfied here, I'll go there and then I'll be satisfied. And then what happens when you get there? Something else happens and guess what? You're not satisfied. So then you thought it was this problem, but that's actually not the problem. What the problem is, ourself, our consciousness. Because if we're seeing everything in relation to Krishna, everything's ecstatic. So if we're not, it's okay, but we should be aware that we're not, to see that we're not on the spiritual platform. So we have to follow in line with the prescribed duties that are given. But what are prescribed duties? Prescribed duties are given in the Shastra. Right? There's this Varnashram system which seemingly is not so applicable to most of us. Kshatriya, Shudra, so on. So it's like, what is our exact prescribed duties? And our prescribed duties here at the temple, living in this atmosphere, is, brahmachari, or, essentially a brahmachari, somebody who's trying to take up full devotional service and, be more renounced. And it's to follow the directions of the spiritual master and engage in menial service. This is the whole point of the ashram. And this is what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita in this 18th chapter. He's talking about sannyas and tyag, and he says essentially that tyag, working, doing action but not being attached to the fruits of result, is a much higher position than taking up the renounced order. Because the renounced order is essentially running away from a duty. I don't want to do this duty because I don't like it. I don't like to do this duty because it's wet, or it makes me bogged down, or whatever. So we're running away from the duty. Whereas somebody who's able to work being unattached to the fruits of result, he can do any activity and he's unattached. This is the whole premise, everything in the Bhagavad Gita. This is the theme throughout the whole thing, where Krishna is trying to encourage Arjuna to fight in the battle. And then here he says that one who's acting in this consciousness that I'm describing, where they're fully unattached to the fruits of the work, they can kill men in this world, but they don't kill. They're not subject to the sin that comes, because they're not attached to the fruits of the work. They're performing their duty. So if we perform our duty and practice what Krishna is saying, these austerities of mind, and get absorbed in that way, then any duty becomes so significant. You can get more absorbed when you're sweeping the floor and cleaning the temple than you can when you're sitting and chanting japa. One can sit and read Srimad Bhagavatam for 5 hours, and you think, oh wow, yeah, this is so nice, and then somebody asks you, what did you read? And it's just in one ear and out the other ear. But somebody could clean the temple floor just like sincerely doing it and chanting Hare Krishna, and then you ask them, oh, what did you realize? And they had like all these nectar realizations about humility, selfless service, all these things. And these are the characteristics that we need to allow us to actually enter deeply into the holy name. Krishna can see what's within our heart. We can't see, that's the problem. We can only see the immediate situation. The Shreyas and Preyas. So, okay, the Yuga Dharma is to chant the holy name. So we're taking up chanting of the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're doing this every single day, and it's a dedicated practice. It requires this determination and enthusiasm. But along with that, we need service, and we need to hear or read. If we're only reading and chanting, studying and hearing a lot, tendency is we'll get puffed up. We think, oh, I'm smart, I know so much, and these guys, they're just spaced out. Or if I'm doing service all the time, just service and chanting and no reading, then I'm going to get lethargic, I'm going to get bummed out, I'm going to be, why am I doing this? This doesn't make sense, I want to do something else. And if we're doing service and reading but no chanting, then there's no hope. Chanting is the essence. So the point is, we need to hear. We need to hear sufficiently. We need to have intelligence. Intelligence is coming from Krishna. We should study what Krishna is saying. And if we understand what Krishna is saying, then I could go cut the grass, I could go live like a snake outside, I could wash the dishes, I could chant Hare Krishna. It's all the same. I'll be totally absorbed in the transcendental state. But if not, then we're making distinctions, and maybe we're in an opportunity in life where we're given an opportunity where we could sit and read all day or chant all day. But maybe we're not in that situation. The best course of action to navigate this is to approach senior Vaishnavas, in particular the Guru, to determine our nature and what we can actually do. And the thing is, we can approach them and they give us a suggestion or an idea or point us in a direction, and we could say, okay, yes, yes, yes. But then within our heart, we're saying, no, 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 no. And we still have this idea. But the point is, we have these authorities so we can actually discuss with and bring it up. All of our doubts and all of our problems, like I said earlier. If we want to be checkmated, we can be checkmated. But most of the times we don't want to, because we know what that means. That means surrender. What does surrender mean? It means I have to act according to somebody else's will and not my will. And ultimately, that's the problem. I'm doing something I don't want to do, which means we're attached to the fruits of our actions, because I want to do this. So, I hope that's helpful at all. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Dr. Joseph.
Krishna. I don't want to take up too much of your class time, but you touched on a point that I found really interesting, having to do with offenses, and I'm getting acquainted with offenses. It seems like up until I arrived, I was committing all of the defects of a conditioned soul. I still am, but the degree to which I was committing them was so much heavier. And it seems like I wasn't getting such immediate repercussions for my actions until I arrived. And I wanted to know, is this like in some way Krishna's mercy that I'm receiving these like bounce backs in my devotional service? And I guess just what are your thoughts?
So, if you go outside and you see an animal on the grass or on the street, it has different things happening to it, but it can't see the bigger picture of like why, you know? Like somebody makes a noise over here and then it causes this chain reaction and then they almost get like run over or something, you know, like they can't see that. So my point is, when we're in the conditioned sphere of life, we can't see, and we're turning away from all the problems that we have, all of our anxieties. We cope with our anxieties with intoxication or watching movies or eating all these comfort foods that actually are detrimental to our body. You know, we all have our outlet. I remember before, years ago, I worked at a place and there was a guy telling like the people that we worked with, you know, he said you should have no more than 2 vices. And at the time I was counting and I had way more than 2 vices. But now I'm looking at like 2 vices. What kind of advice is this? It's horrible advice. Because he knows nothing better than that. This is Krishna is explaining this actually in this chapter. This is knowledge in the mode of passion. Somebody has this ideology and this, you know, you could be better in this life, just, you know, limit yourself here, but you can totally enjoy. It's mode of passion. So, because we're coming to devotional service and we're not taking shelter of these things that we've used as distractions our whole life, there's only one shelter now. It's Krishna. Do we choose to take shelter of Krishna? Because when we take up the process of devotional service, namely Sankirtan movement, this Chaitadarpana Marjana, the dust of the heart becomes cleansed. You know, so like imagine you walk into, you know, this old basement, it's like covered with dust, filthy, you know, but it's kind of dark, you can't really see it so much. You turn on the light and you're like, okay, this place is weird. But then once you start cleaning, dust starts flying up everywhere and you're like, oh wow, this is like a real mess. It's worse than I thought. So it's like us. Once you really start purifying your heart, a lot of the dust comes up to the surface and we can see, oh wow, I'm actually not as great as I thought I was. I thought I had life figured out. I thought I was happy. But I'm not perfect. This is hurting to our ego. This is all the false ego that has this thought. Because the true nature of the soul is just joyful and blissful. So if we're ever feeling a state that's not completely blissed out in spiritual realization, then we know we're not on the spiritual platform. So then, as we take up the purification process, you know, by following devotional service, then naturally these things happen. And in the beginning, it could be very, very, very bittersweet. Very bittersweet. But then, as one crosses over nishta, becoming fixed in devotional service, and crosses over into the higher states where I was telling you the other night about coming to nishta, being fixed. It said that the path of devotional service is like climbing a mountain. And the top of the mountain is nishta. And once you get past nishta, then you cross the other side of the mountain and you start going downhill. So rather than you running towards Krishna, like running away from the material energy to run towards Krishna, at that point you actually start running towards Krishna because you're actually attracted to Krishna. But before nishta, what stage is there? Anartha nivritti. That's what we're talking about. Is that when we take up the path of devotional service, anartha nivritti, the anarthas start becoming removed. And this is, one could say, preliminary, just to attune us to actually entering into the parampara. And when one actually accepts the Diksha Guru, then anartha nivritti really starts taking place. But it's only to the degree that he applies the process, to the degree that he takes shelter of his Guru's lotus feet, Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, of the scripture, of the holy name. Because anartha nivritti, one could do for hundreds of years, hundreds of lives, millions of lives. We just drag our feet and chant Hare Krishna over here, shnika shnika ma, shnika 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 ma. Prasadam time, Jai Hari Bol. You know, we sleep during Bhagavatam class, and then we excited for prasadam. It's good, you know, we should be excited for prasadam, but prasadam is there to fuel our devotional efforts so we can continue. And I was just reading somewhere, I forget where, it's somewhere here. Maybe. Anyways, when we just reach a point where we persevere in devotional service and just go for that, whether I'm feeling bad or good or, you know, how I feel, then that's when like things really start taking off. You know, but to the degree we hold on to like all these different ideas and mentalities, you know, where I'm doing something I don't want to do. It's like, who are we fooling, you know? We can't fool Krishna. We can only try to fool ourselves. But the solution is always in Krishna consciousness. It's right here in front of us, like we're literally reading it here. We just have to open it up and not just let the words enter our ears, but allow it to enter our heart and really apply it to our life. And when you apply it to your life, it makes perfect sense. There's no reason not to be satisfied with, you know, whatever situation that we're in. But since we're conditioned, you know, I'm given a certain service and I'm like, man, I hate this. I'd rather do anything right now. But this is an opportunity for growth. And that kind of ties into your question, whereas like outside of devotional service, most people are looking for the opposite of that growth. They're looking for complacency. They're looking for comfort. They're looking for instant gratification. So as a devotee is declaring war on the material energy. I don't want that. I don't want to be complacent with, you know, my little tiny situation in life. I mean, the world is so big. The universe is so big. We're on one lump of earth. And if you look up in the sky, you know, there's so many other lumps of earth, you know, planets, I mean. But if you travel the earth in this country alone, there's so many people. But we think we're so special. But you travel around and you see there's so many people and they all think they're equally as special. The center of the world revolves around us. Even though we may watch the news, we may have, you know, friends and family we love and give attention to, but still the world, as we know it, is here. As soon as my satisfaction gets derailed, I'm upset. As soon as somebody comes and pleases my senses, they're the best. But Krishna's saying, you know, one sees... I wish I could find these shlokas that I want to, that are like right here that we just read. But it takes too much time. But Krishna, he's saying that in the mode of goodness, one doesn't make distinctions between family and, you know, the body. You know, he sees the spiritual entity within all the living entities. Where somebody in the mode of passion sees, okay, this is a squirrel, this is a dog, this is a raccoon. You know, but somebody who's on the higher platform sees, okay, yeah, there's spiritual entities within these different bodies. But then they'll take another body. And then that leads up to the end where Krishna says, Brahma bhuta prasanatman na shochati na kangshati samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. Says when one is actually on the spiritual platform, he neither hankers nor laments. No hankering, no lamenting. Oh, I wish I was doing this. I wish I wasn't doing this. Telltale sign we're not actually on the spiritual platform. And he sees samasarveshu bhuteshu. He sees all living entities equally. So instead of me giving like special credit to my family just because they're like a body related to this body, which is temporary, it's not actually me. You see the whole world as your family. We're all children of God. And you can see beyond the material covering. And then life becomes, I don't know, pretty amazing at that point. Liberating. So, we used a lot of time on these two questions. Does anybody have any other questions or topics or doubts or reflections? Yes, you have a microphone.
I didn't join from the starting of this preaching, but I have one doubt that been like from past years. I do believe in Krishna from my younger age. Like I used to start reading the Bhagavad Gita at the age of 3. The only thing is questioning mine is like if we manifest something which is like we don't know, it's above beyond our thinking, but God knows which is good for us or bad for us, but we do really want that. If we manifest it very strong, will it happen, or is there any realization that we are going to get, okay, this is the decision that God have been taken, but back of the mind we are in the stage that we need that very badly in our life. So it's a question from years. I didn't get a chance to ask any of them. Yeah.
It's a very good question. So everybody's working very hard. Working very, very hard to be in a situation of life that they think will bring them happiness. So some people, especially a lot of people we meet from India, they come from India and they go to school here studying, and their parents are pushing them so they can become, big computer programmers, big doctors. Why do they want these jobs? Money. Only reason why. What happens when they take these jobs? They're actually working for other people. They're actually becoming Shudras, which is a very low-class position. A Brahmana can't be purchased by anyone because he's happy in the spiritual reality. He gives Krishna, he gives spiritual wisdom, he doesn't need anything. So we should strive for the highest goal, which is to just depend on Krishna, and whatever Krishna brings, then that's perfectly fine. But we may have desires, and that's okay. Krishna consciousness isn't okay. You now have to go become renounced and shave your head and you'll become a monk. No, it's about learning to connect wherever we're at to Krishna's service. So if we want a good job, if we want a nice husband, a family, perfectly fine. But we have to learn to do it in a way that we can connect it to Krishna. But if we follow the guidelines of the scriptures, then naturally there'll be a purification process, an elevation of our consciousness that leads to more and more devotion of Krishna. But if we follow our own lusty ways, I want to get married and have a family just so I can enjoy, and then we can go, watch all the American movies and go to, the restaurants, then you're going to be cheated. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to reach the supreme destination. You're not going to understand the point of life. You're going to become more and more entrapped in the lower modes of material nature. So yeah, we have desires, but finding a way to connect that desire to Krishna and seeing that that's the highest goal. But with one who has higher knowledge, they realize whatever Krishna brings for me is the best. Krishna here, he describes there's 5 factors of action. There's like the body, the senses, the soul, like the doer, the faculties for like doing the motivation, and ultimately God. So, a wise person sees that God is the supreme controller. Let me surrender and depend upon Him. And everybody can have some kind of example of this, where if we try to work hard and get so much, but we only try to enjoy it ourselves, it's not so fun. But if we get nice foodstuffs or nice whatever, and we try to share it with somebody we care about, it's much more pleasure. So similarly, we can desire to manifest our dreams in our reality, but when we get there, we'll realize that it comes up short. But if we can learn to serve Krishna and please Krishna and give whatever Krishna gives to us and connect it to Krishna, then we'll always be pleased and satisfied. And we might reach some hurdles, like he's mentioning, we have some deep things in our consciousness coming up. these need to be removed so we can actually be in our real state of bliss and happiness. And if we go to a doctor and I have a disease, my leg, and I'm afraid, I don't want to look at it, let's pretend it's not there, I'll lose my leg. But I have to go to a doctor and look at it. So this is Guru. Guru is doctor. Guru can tell you, this is your position in life, okay, you should do like this, and go towards Krishna. And we can ask questions, how to understand more and more. But the more we understand the Bhagavad Gita, it becomes so easy to see that the main point of life is surrender to Krishna. Krishna, in the end of the Bhagavad Gita, the very last instruction he gives to Arjuna, he says, Sarva dharman pratyaja, mamekam saranam vraja. Give up all varieties of dharma and just surrender unto me. I'll protect you, have no fear. So, Arjuna was so doubtful about dharma, my religious duty, that he wasn't seeing Sanatan dharma. So we can get caught up in the dharma, of our family, our job, our wealth, our health. But ultimately, if we're not focusing on Sanatan dharma, it's all shrama evahi kevalam. It's a waste of time. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it says that no matter what position in life you're in, if you develop an attraction to hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then samsiri haritoshanam, this is perfection. But if you're in the greatest position and you don't develop this attraction to hear and glorify the Supreme Lord, then it's a waste of time. So somebody could be a brahmana, a nice saintly person, but they're not actually interested in hearing about Krishna and taking up the process, then it's a waste of time. It's just somebody's wearing a string around their chest. But if somebody's a housewife with a family and kids, but she's teaching her kids to hear about Krishna, she's chanting Hare Krishna, offering food to Krishna and serving her family that way, and this is perfection. So we have to use the position that we're in and connect it to Krishna. So, I hope that helps at all. Okay, anything else? We're over time. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai Ki Jai.